That night I understood something no mother should ever have to learn. A wedding can actually destroy two families. My name is Freda Jackson, and I'm 55 years old, a mother of 3. A woman who thought she had seen enough of life to never be surprised again. But life still had lessons for me, lessons wrapped in silk ribbons, white roses, and the sound of breaking hearts. And this story is about my oldest son, today, pronounced To-O. But to me, he's still the little boy who used to run barefoot through the garden, laughing as if the world belonged to him. He was getting married, and the day that should have been the happiest of his life became the darkest. I can still remember everything: the scent of lilies floating through the church, the soft white lights hanging from the ceilings like tiny stars, guests dressed beautifully, smiling, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Toto stood at the altar wearing that navy blue suit he loved so much. He was nervous but glowing, excitement trembling in his hands. I was sitting in the front row, my heart full, my eyes wet. Everything was perfect until the toast. Humphrey Sterling. A big man, physically and socially. Owner of Sterling and Associates, one of the biggest construction companies in the state. Everyone in that room knew him. Everyone respected him. Everyone clapped as he raised his champagne flute. But respect can be built on illusions, on secrets, and that night the illusion shattered. He lifted his glass and smiled. "I want to toast my daughter Sophia," he said, voice deep like someone used to commanding an entire room. "She's always been stubborn, always doing things her own way, and today she insisted on marrying this young man." Soft, nervous laughter filled the hall. But then he looked straight at my son, straight into his eyes, and with a smirk that only cruel men know how to wear, "That boy is an idiot." The room erupted in laughter. Except Toto, except me. I watched the blood drain from my son's face. His hands trembled, and his gaze dropped to the floor. That joy, that happiness he carried since morning, faded in seconds. People clinked glasses, people laughed. As if humiliating a groom at his own wedding was some kind of entertainment, my hands dug into the napkin on my lap. My lungs burned, but I kept quiet, because that was the moment, the exact moment, I realized something with absolute clarity. That man was never going to get away with humiliating my child. Not him, not ever, because I knew things he thought no one knew, and that night I would reveal everything if forced. But to understand how I reached that moment, how I knew the truth hiding behind Mr. Sterling's polished smile, we need to go back. Back to months before the wedding, back to the first time my instincts whispered, "Free to investigate that man." It began on a freezing January afternoon. Toto and I were in my kitchen, drinking spiced coffee the way we always did. He looked unusually shy, almost like a boy again. "Mom," he said, "I met someone. Her name was Sophia, an architecture student, brilliant, kind, someone who made him laugh." I saw the softness in his smile, the hope in his eyes. When a mother sees her child truly happy, it's almost like breathing fresh air after months underwater. So I asked, "What does she do? What's her family like?" And when he said her last name, Sterling, my heart paused. I had heard that name before, but I didn't know why it bothered me yet. Sophia comes for dinner that Sunday. Sophia arrived for dinner. She was elegant, but not in a pretentious way. Long dark hair, gentle eyes, a soft voice that could calm storms. She helped set the table, complimented my home, laughed politely, and spoke kindly. A perfect girl. But when she mentioned her father, her tone shifted. She didn't have to say much. Pain speaks even when words don't. "My dad, he's demanding," she whispered. The way her fork moved circles around her plate, the way she avoided eye contact, the way Toto squeezed her hand, I knew something was wrong. "He doesn't trust anyone who doesn't come from money," she admitted. I felt something tighten in my chest. Money, it always starts with money, and it always ends with something darker, but I smiled for her sake, even though inside I wasn't at peace. It began on a freezing January afternoon. Toto and I were in my kitchen, drinking spiced coffee the way we always did. He looked unusually shy, almost like a boy again. "Mom," he said, "I met someone. Her name was Sophia. An architecture student, brilliant, kind, someone who made him laugh. I saw the softness in his smile, the hope in his eyes. When a mother sees her child truly happy, it's almost like breathing fresh air after months underwater." So I asked, "What does she do? What's her family like?" And when he said her last name, Sterling, my heart paused. I had heard that name before, but I didn't know why it bothered me yet. Sophia comes for dinner that Sunday. Sophia arrived for dinner. She was elegant, but not in a pretentious way. Long dark hair, gentle eyes, a soft voice that could calm storms. She helped set the table, complimented my home, laughed politely, and spoke kindly, a perfect girl. But when she mentioned her father, her tone shifted. She didn't have to say much. Pain speaks even when words don't. "My dad, he's demanding," she whispered. The way her fork moved circles around her plate, the way she avoided eye contact, the way Toto squeezed her hand, I knew something was wrong. "He doesn't trust anyone who doesn't come from money," she admitted. I felt something tighten in my chest. Money, it always starts with money, and it always ends with something darker, but I smiled for her sake. Even though inside I wasn't at peace. Everything would have continued if I hadn't seen him. One afternoon, while sipping coffee at a downtown cafe, I saw Humphrey Sterling walk by. With a woman and 2 children, he kissed her openly. The children called him Dad. My heart nearly stopped. Not because he was cheating, but because of what it meant for my son. If this man's life was built on lies, if his empire was made of sand, my son would be married into a disaster waiting to explode. And so I hired someone, a private investigator named Roy Menz. I never thought I'd do something like that. But a mother's instinct is a force stronger than fear. For a week, Roy followed him, watched him, dug into everything. And when he finally called me to his office, my entire world tilted. "Mrs. Jackson," he said, "Humphrey Sterling has 2 families. The photos on his desk told the story, Mr. Sterling entering an apartment with the other woman, picking up children from school, kissing her in a parking lot." And then Roy handed me documents, evidence of fraud, embezzlement, stolen company funds, crushing debt, unpaid taxes, millions missing. His company, Roy said, is 6 months away from collapse. I felt sick. This man, the same man who looked down on my son, was a criminal, and his family didn't even know. Roy looked at me seriously. "What are you going to do?" I didn't know what to say. If I told my son, he might cancel the wedding. If I told Sophia, it would destroy her world. And if I confronted Mr. Sterling, he would come after me like a wounded animal. So I made a choice, the hardest I've ever made. I would stay silent until the right moment, until he gave me a reason. And then I would break him. But I didn't know then that the right moment would come at the wedding. In front of 200 people, under crystal lights and white roses, right after he humiliated my son. And that would be the night 2 families shattered. That night, as I stood at the kitchen sink replaying every moment, something inside me whispered that the real storm hadn't even started yet, and I was right, because early the next morning my phone rang. Not once, not twice, but 11 times. All from the same person, the bride's mother, Mrs. Evangeline. Now, understand this, Evangeline was not the type of woman who called anyone. She summoned people, sharp voice, expensive perfumes, high expectations. If she called, something was wrong. I picked up before I could even say hello. She snapped, "Freda, you need to get to my house, now." Her tone wasn't angry, it was scared. And that terrified me more than anything. When I arrived, the front door was wide open. Servants rushed around like there'd been a fire. Evangeline stood in the living room, holding a crumpled piece of paper, her hands shaking so violently she could barely breathe. She looked at me with eyes that were red not from crying, but from something worse, humiliation. Then she handed me the paper. At first it felt like reading a bad joke, a prank, a lie, but the longer I stared, the colder my stomach became. Because the paper wasn't random, it was a receipt from a jewelry store for an engagement ring bought 2 days before the proposal, but not by my son. Not by Toto, the name on the receipt, a man neither of us had ever heard of, a stranger, and the worst part. The ring size matched the bride's perfectly. Evangeline whispered, "Freda, my daughter didn't get engaged to your son out of love. Someone else proposed. Your son was the backup." My chest tightened, my vision blurred. This wasn't just betrayal. This was devastation. I felt anger, shame, disbelief, everything at once. But then Evangeline said something that made my blood freeze. "There's more, much more. Your son is in danger." The secret they hid from us. We rushed upstairs to the bride's room. Her things were thrown everywhere, drawers open, clothes scattered, perfume bottles smashed on the floor. She was gone, not went for a walk, gone, ran away gone, and on her desk was a letter, not addressed to her mother. Not addressed to my son, but addressed to the man I truly love. My hands trembled as I read it. She confessed she had been planning to elope. She only agreed to marry Toto because her family forced her. The real lover had disappeared before the wedding, and in her panic she accepted my son's proposal to save face. But once she found her lover again, she ran, leaving 2 families in ruins, leaving my son with a shattered future, and leaving us with only one terrifying question. Where was she now? The moment everything collapsed as we stood there in shock, someone came running up the stairs. It was one of the house guards. His face was pale, his voice stuttering. "Ma'am, we found something outside the gate." We rushed down. And there, on the ground, was a small handbag, the bride's handbag, but the true horror wasn't the bag. It was what was inside, a phone, smashed screen, still buzzing, still receiving messages from an unknown number. The latest one said, "Stop calling, she's with me now." Evangeline gasped. I nearly collapsed, because everything we feared was true. She wasn't kidnapped, she wasn't missing. She had chosen someone else, and my son, he didn't know any of this. He still thought he was going to be a groom. While chaos unfolded at Evangeline's house, my son, my sweet, hopeful, innocent son, was at home ironing his suit. He hummed softly, smiling to himself. Toto had always been a dreamer. He believed in fairy tales, believed in loyalty. Believed that if he loved with his whole heart, he would be loved the same way. And that morning, he was happier than I'd ever seen him. He kept checking his reflection in the mirror, touching the lapels of his jacket, rehearsing how he would greet his bride when she walked down the aisle. He had no idea that she wasn't coming. He had no idea she had run away. He had no idea that a stranger was sending messages claiming, "She's with me now." And I didn't know how to tell him. The weight of a mother's heart I drove home in silence. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My chest felt like a boulder pressed against it. How do you destroy your child's dream with your own words? How do you tell him, "Son, she chose someone else," when he bought roses the night before, when he practiced saying her name with love, when he believed this wedding was the beginning of his real life? But the truth had to be told, no matter how much it hurt. When I entered the house, Toto turned around and smiled brightly. "Mom, look. Do I look like a groom?" His eyes sparkled. I broke. A tiny crack inside my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I forced a smile, but my voice trembled. "Toto, we need to talk." He frowned, confused. About what? I sat down. He sat across from me, and for a moment I wished time would freeze. Then I told him everything, the missing bride. The receipt, the other man, the messages, the letter she left. He didn't speak, not a single word, just stared at me, eyes wide, and then slowly, painfully, he whispered, "Mom, you're lying." Denial, the first wound. He stood up abruptly, shaking his head. No, she loves me. She said she loves me." His voice cracked. "She wouldn't run away from our wedding. She wouldn't choose someone else. She promised. But promises mean nothing when love is fake." I showed him the handbag. I showed him the smashed phone. I showed him the messages. He stared at them, and something inside him broke. His breathing became heavy. His lips trembled. He sank to the floor, clutching his head like he was trying to hold his world together with his bare hands. And I sat beside him, holding him as he cried like a child whose heart had been ripped out. My God, Mom, what did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Those words killed me, because no matter how old your child becomes, their pain still feels like your own. The call that changed everything hours later, as the sun began to set, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. But some instinct made me answer. It was Evangeline, her voice shaking. Freda, you need to come back. We found something, and it's worse than we thought. My stomach twisted. What did you find? There was a long pause. Then she whispered. It's about the man she ran away with. He isn't who he says he is. My heart stopped. What do you mean? Evangeline swallowed hard. Your son might be in danger too. And suddenly this wasn't just a broken wedding. This was something darker, something deeper, something that could destroy both families in a way none of us expected. When Evangeline said it's worse than we thought, I felt the world tilt beneath my feet, but nothing prepared me for what she told me next. Because the man the bride had run away with, the man sending those taunting messages, wasn't her lover. He wasn't her friend. He wasn't someone she had known for years. He was a stranger, a complete stranger whom she had met only 3 weeks before the wedding. And according to Evangeline, he had a criminal record, not for theft, not for scams, but for violent behavior. Assault charges, threats, a restraining order filed by another woman. This wasn't a romantic elopement. This wasn't a secret love story. This was a trap, and the bride, in her desperation to escape a forced marriage, had walked right into it. The photo that froze my blood when I reached Evangeline's home again. She didn't speak. She simply handed me her daughter's laptop. Open the last video, she whispered. I did. The screen lit up, and what I saw made every hair on my arm stand. It was a recording of the bride, her face pale, lips trembling, eyes swollen from crying. She sat in a dim room, whispering into the camera. If anything happens to me, please forgive me, Mom. Forgive me, Toto. I didn't know who he really was. My breath hitched. Behind her, a door creaked open. A man's shadow moved across the wall. The bride flinched. The video ended. I felt sick. Evangeline sank onto the sofa, sobbing into her hands. This isn't about love, Freda, she cried. This man, he manipulates women. He traps them, and she was vulnerable, scared. She made a terrible mistake. I closed the laptop slowly. Because I knew exactly what this meant. The bride wasn't betraying my son. She was running from her own life. Running from control, running from expectations, and she ran right into the arms of danger. The search begins. The police were called immediately. But they moved slowly, too slowly, paperwork, protocols, procedures, while a girl's life was ticking like a bomb. So Evangeline grabbed my hand and said, "We find her ourselves." And without hesitation, I agreed. 2 mothers, joined by fear, bound by a disaster neither of us saw coming. We drove through the city, checking every place the bride used to visit. Cafes, libraries, parks, nothing. Then we showed the man's photo around. Most people had never seen him, until one shopkeeper said, "Oh yeah, I saw him last night. He bought a lot of fuel, paid in cash. Fuel. Late night, cash." The pieces snapped together like a nightmare puzzle. This man wasn't planning to start a new life with her. He was planning something else, something dark, something irreversible. The message that broke everything. As we rushed back to the car, my phone buzzed. A new text from the same number. "Tell your son to stop searching. She chose me, and tonight it ends." My heart plummeted. Ends? Ends what? Her life, his life, both families' peace. I read the message out loud. Evangeline gasped. Her voice cracked into a scream. "We're running out of time." And then, before I could reply, another text arrived. A location pin. a place outside the city, an abandoned roadside warehouse, remote, silent, dangerous. I looked at Evangeline, she looked at me, and without a word we drove, straight into the darkness. Straight toward whatever nightmare was waiting for us, straight toward the truth. The road to the warehouse stretched into the night like a black river. No lights, no people, just endless silence and the sound of our heartbeat pounding louder than the engine. Evangeline gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She was here. She whispered, staring straight ahead. I feel it. I didn't answer. My throat was too tight to speak. Every mother has a built-in radar, a sense that alerts her when her child is in danger. And that night, both of our radars screamed the same message: run faster, before it's too late. The warehouse stood like a monster when we finally reached the location pin. We saw it, a massive old warehouse, rusty. Half collapsed, covered in vines, the windows were shattered, the door hung crooked. It looked abandoned, but the truth. It was breathing, alive with danger. A single flickering light glowed from inside. I felt chills crawl across my back. Evangeline whispered, "Freda, what if we're too late?" I swallowed hard, then we fight anyway. We stepped out of the car. The wind howled, carrying the faint smell of smoke. My heart clenched, fuel. My mind flashed back to the shopkeeper's words. A man buying fuel at night, paying cash, no questions asked. Oh God, what was he planning to burn? The first sign, we pushed the warehouse door open slowly. It creaked, loud, shrill, like a warning scream. Inside, shadows danced across cracked walls. Broken crates lay scattered. The floor was covered in dust, except for one thing: footprints, fresh footprints, leading deeper inside. I pointed, Evangeline nodded. We followed the prints, heart racing, breath shaking. With each step, the air grew warmer. Thicker, then I heard it, a sound so faint I thought I imagined it, a whimper, a girl's whimper. Evangeline froze. "Freda, that's her." We ran. The room at the far end of the warehouse, was a small storage room. The door was half open. A dim light flickered inside. I pushed it open, and I will never forget what I saw. The bride was sitting on the floor, her hands tied, her face bruised, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her lips trembled. "Mom, Freda, please help me." Evangeline fell to her knees, sobbing. "My baby, oh God, my baby." I rushed toward her, but then a voice boomed from behind. "Don't move." Cold. Sharp, deadly. We turned slowly, and there he was, the man, tall, dark eyes, a sick, twisted smile stretching across his face. He held a metal rod in one hand and a can of fuel in the other. My heart hammered. He wasn't planning to run away with her. He was planning to destroy everything. The bride whimpered. He said, "If he can't have me, no one will." "The monster speaks." He stepped closer, eyes locked on us. "You mothers," he sneered, "always interfering, always ruining things." Evangeline stood up, shaking but fierce. "Let her go," she demanded. "She doesn't love you." He laughed, a horrible, echoing laugh. Love? Who said anything about love? I needed her, and she needed someone obedient enough to follow her out of her house. He pointed at the bride with the metal rod. Poor little rich girl, running from one cage into another. I clenched my fists. Let her go, now. He tilted his head, studying me. "Oh, the groom's mother." He smirked. "I heard your son cried. How sweet. Shame he'll never see her again." My blood ran cold. "What have you done?" He raised the fuel can and shook it lightly. "Tonight the story ends for all of us." The fire begins. He splashed fuel onto the floor. The smell filled the room instantly. Evangeline screamed no. He held up a lighter, tiny, harmless, looking but deadly in his hands. "Step back," he snarled, "or we all burn together." My legs trembled. Smoke, fire, darkness. Was this how it ended? Was this how two families died? Was this how a wedding turned into a tragedy? Suddenly, a noise echoed from outside. A shout, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. The police. He snarled in rage. No, You weren't supposed to find us." He swung the metal rod, and everything erupted into chaos.